Good evening, participants and all the delegates and our eminent speaker, Dr. Koel Mukherjee. I do welcome you in the webinar series of Narsina Dutt College. Today is a very special day, a day dedicated to the indigenous people, which is really very much interesting. And in this auspicious day, it is really interesting too to listen some important things and some new also from you, where you have directly worked and directly acquainted with those people living in Andaman who are facing different kind of natural difficulties and some other socio-political too. So it will really be nice to hear and enjoy all of your analysis and all of your thing what you will share with us. And I'm sure that this webinar will be a fantastic one and we will be able to enlighten ourselves. And please carry on. And I am sure that this webinar will be a grand success. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Madam. I believe I'm audible to all of you.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, fine.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. The International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples is observed on 9th of August each year to raise awareness and to protect the rights of the world's indigenous population. We are also, on behalf of Narasimha Datta College, Howrah, celebrating the occasion by hosting this national level webinar on the journey from isolation to interaction during the British Raj, the case of natives of Andaman. We have with us Dr. Koel Mukherjee as our respected speaker. Dr. Mukherjee is presently serving as anthropologist in Anthropological Survey of India, Andaman and Nicobar Regional Center, Port Blair. She did her PhD in anthropology from University of Calcutta. She had been a project fellow in UGC UPE major research project in the Department of Law, University of Calcutta. She was assistant research scientist at National Nutrition Monitoring Bureau, West Bengal, research associate in Northwest Regional Center of Anthropological Survey of India, Dehradun, an assistant professor, Department of Anthropology, Holdia Government College. Dr. Mukherjee has published more than 40 research articles in journals and edited volumes of national and international repute. She has also presented research papers in 25 national and international seminars and conferences. Dr. Mukherjee has worked in several projects like forensic anthropology, nutritional anthropology, biocultural diversity, environment and sustainable development, and anthropological study on denotified community, and many more. She is on the editorial board of 2 international journals. We will hear Dr. Mukherjee today. Before I invite Dr. Mukherjee to deliver her speech, I would request the participants to post their questions in the chat box to facilitate the interactive session after the speech is over. Thank you all. And now it's over to Dr. Koel Mukherjee. Madam, please.
Am I audible?
Yes, madam, you are audible.
Thank you so much for your nice, cordial, and generous words for introducing me to the learned audience. I have a PowerPoint presentation here. Can I share my slide for just starting my presentation here?
Yes, indeed, you can.
Just give me a few minutes. It's going to be
Okay.
open. It's taking a few minutes to open, I think.
Yes, no problem, madam.
Oh,
Please.
yeah. I think I need to share again. Is it visible? I think it is visible.
Yes, yes, madam. It's
Yeah.
visible.
Okay. And namaskar and good evening, all of you. I just would like to express at first my immense gratitude and pleasure to be here for inviting me today here on a very auspicious day, International Day of World's Indigenous People. And keeping the view of the day's significance, I have selected the topic for my today's discussion is the journey from isolation to interaction during British Raj, case of natives in Andaman. At the outset, I just would like to mention that the history of Andaman and Nicobar Islands is today quite conveniently comfortable one. The history of the Britishers, Kalapani, Second World War, Japanese occupation, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Veer Savarkar, the first hosting of the Indian national flag, and moreover, the formation of Mini India, where all the communities, religion, and the other sects live in peace and harmony. But the history of this island is silent in many parts. That means there are gaping holes that are conveniently allowed to remain so. Yes, I'm talking about the history of victors of the people who have come here to dominate the island, and the vanquished who doesn't have anything to say. Actually, the overall history of this island couldn't say anything about the past, present, and future of those people, of those communities who actually belong to this island. Rather, this island belonged to them. Here I'm talking about the 6 different tribal communities of Andaman and Nicobar Islands uh, who have come here, lived here, and flourished here for more than 20,000 years. And nowadays, this island have become the homeland of the most primitive, isolated, and sensitive tribal groups, but unfortunately left in very small number nowadays. Therefore, it is very relevant today to examine the historical link between the isolation to interaction of the natives of Andaman Island with the British colonizers. And within the framework, I just would like to show the present situation of the Great Andamanis, Unge, and Jarwa as they are integrally intervened and affected mostly by the shifting agendas of the developmental policies during the British Raj. The Andaman, the name is actually came from a Sanskrit word Nagna Manava, which means naked man. And Nicobar, the name also derived from the Tamil word Nakavaram, means naked again. Therefore, the clusters of this island are known as the land of the naked people. The early descriptions of the Andaman Islanders and the island itself, made by different writers who barely knew or visited the islands or saw any islanders closely, betray the propensity to see them through the lens of horror. Therefore, leading to the description of the islanders as dog-faced, cannibal, fierce race. Here, it is an illustration made by Kaino Kefli for the Marco Polo's travelogue, who never visited the island, never saw any islanders, just passed through the coastline of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in 1290 and laid the foundation for the fictitious view that the islanders were very hostile and they should be kept away. But this constructed image of the cannibals conditioned the view of the future of the Andaman, as well as, fortunately, delayed the arrival of the colonizers on this island. Now, after the imagined and perceived cannibal image of these islanders, we need to know what actually made these Andaman and Nicobar Islands biogeographically isolated from the rest of the world. Here, I'm just showing the geographical location of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Here, the Andaman actually is a northernmost island of the archipelago, and as well as lies around 193 kilometers away from the Myanmar. And Nicobar, which is the southern tip of the Indian map, lies 200 kilometers away from the northwest of Sumatra. And the both islands, Andaman and Nicobar, were separated to the south by a 160 kilometer wide submarine channel called 10-degree channel. And obviously, the Andaman have some biogeographical affinities with Myanmar and Thailand, and Nicobar with Indonesia and Southeast Asia. But strikingly, there is a significant variation in the number of the islands assigned to the Andaman group, ranging from 212 to 319, maybe due to the differences in distinction between the rocky outcrops and the islands. And currently, total 37 number of islands are inhabited in Andaman group of islands. Therefore, after this description of the location of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, it is very imperative that the insular position of these islands has made the Andaman group of islands extremely obscure. Not only that, even today, this kind of obscurity is still not dispelled totally, and the islands being cut off from the rest of the world, but still the homelands of 6 distinctive tribal communities of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands until the very late arrival of the people from the so-called civilized countries at the end of the 18th century. Now, after this location, just we have to look at these people, the people of Andaman and Nicobar, whom Marco Polo had described as dog-faced cannibal race. Mainly, the people of Andaman and Nicobar actually divided into 2 groups, Andamanis and Nicobaris, belong to the racial stocks Negrito and Mongoloid respectively. The Andamanis Negrito group includes Great Andamanis, Jarwa, Unge, and Sentinelese. And similarly, the Nicobarese Mongoloid, the Great Nicobarese Mongoloid includes the Nicobarese and Champagne. Here, it is very meaningful to be mentioned that the Nicobarese and Andamanis are differing a world apart from each other in respect of their livelihood, the pattern of culture, everything. The Andamanis Negrito group are actually designated as the PVTG, hunter-gatherers, and semi-nomadic. They actually move in the band within their respective territory. Use very simple kinds of tools for hunting gathering like spearheads, harpoons, bow and arrows, nets, etc. And very remarkably, they use the canoes for turtle hunting, fishing, and transportation also, except Jarwa. In contrast, the Nicobaris of Great Nicobar are no more predators. They have entered to the stage of the productive economy, and the Champagne of the Great Nicobars are still hunter-gatherer, semi-nomadic, and PVTG, but actually fallen somewhere in between the Andamanis and Nicobaris group in terms of their livelihood patterns. As I can say here that they still go for hunting, they keep herds for pigs, and at the same time they cultivate the coconuts and several tobacco-like plants. Now, I'm just going to introduce the Andamanis Negrito groups, who already I have mentioned, who are hunter-gatherers, semi-nomadic group. It is Onge. Actually, the Onge, the term is not a derivative of Onge language itself. They call themselves Eniregali, which means the absolute man. Until 1950s, they were sparsely distributed and exploited the natural biotic resources of Little Andaman, which is the southernmost island of Andaman archipelago. And after independence, they were resettled in Dubong Creek in 1976 and in South Bay in 1980. And these places actually the fraction of the total size of their original territory. And after independence, they are completely dependent on the Andaman administration for their free rations, including rice, lentils, and essential commodities distributed by the Andaman Adim Janjati Vikas Samiti Port Blair. And it is obvious for this thing, they have grown some kind of dependency towards the government. But concerned by their dependency characteristics, the government have forced them to work in coconut plantation for getting the free rations as a form of bonded labor. But the attempt was failed. And currently, the population of the absolute man in this Andaman island is only 101. After Onge, I need to introduce another very important and prominent group of the tribal community of Andaman, and obviously the concern of our today's discussion, the Great Andamanis, distributed in south to north in Andaman Islands, had 10 different septs, generally called by a generic name is Great Andamanis. But nowadays, only the members of 3 septs are surviving: Aka Biyada, Aka Chari, and Aka Jeru. And they are actually divided into 2 groups on the basis of their resource utilization, like coastal dwellers called Arioto and inland people called Eremtaga. It can be said that the Andamanis, in fact, Great Andamanis, are the first victim of colonization and the developments in Andaman. Not only that, they uprooted from their original habitation and resettled in 1969 in a small island named Strait Island. Actually, the government of India has taken this step as a measure of reparation for the historical injustices that the people have undergone. And later on, during this discussion, I will show what kind of injustices I'm here talking about. And the current population of Great Andamanis is just 44. Now, the famous Jarwa of Andaman Island, they are actually distributed in west coast of South and Middle Andaman, and still continues to live in dense forest and have very limited contact with the outsiders. Approximately 400 nomadic Jarwas live in small groups of 40 to 50 people in chadas, as they call their homes. As I already have mentioned in the introductory slides, that all the Andamanis Negrito groups use canoe for their transportation and other means of subsistence, but Jarwa, the only tribe of Andaman Islands who do not use canoe, just use the simple form of raft. And it can be said that today Jarwa is better off in comparison to the other Andamanis Negrito groups as they are quite hostile to the outsiders and strongly defended their territory. But in 1970, Government of India actually built a 340-kilometer long Andaman Trunk Road, which connects a Port Blair to the north of the island, just slicing through the heart of the Jarwa Forest Reserve. And therefore, it may be said that the ATR road is the singular and most significant important factor in bringing the much more outsiders to the Jarwa home. Moreover, the Andaman Trunk Road actually introduced a most notorious concept of human safari or Jarwa safari in Andaman. Usually, many tourists come to the island and travel through the ATR, and they actually treat the islanders, the Jarwas, like a wild animals in a safari. And here I have quoted a statement given by a tourist that the journey through the tribal reserve was like a safari ride, as we are going amidst dense tropical rainforest and looking for wild animals. And after the famous Jarwa, now I need to introduce the most uncontacted, reclusive people on the earth, the Sentinelese of Andaman Islands, who are the sole habitants of the North Sentinel Island. And actually, till date, the Sentinelese are the only tribal group of Andaman Islands who are being able to continue their own traditional life and livelihood by persistently disallowing the outsiders into their territory. Therefore, the curiosity pertaining to their lifestyles has endured all these years in all sections of the society. Since in 1771, East India Company vessel once passed through the coast of the North Sentinel Island and observed the presence of light therein. And afterwards, it was around November to December 2018, the Sentinelese actually drew the attention, in fact, the international attention to them when an American national, John Allen Chow, went missing after having the venture to encroach upon their land. It was alleged that the Sentinelese killed him after warning him twice to leave this island, and this incident actually portrayed the image of ferocity of those people who do not want any interference of the outsiders into their own territory and long to remain as their masters of their island. And after this introduction, here it is very meaningful to be mentioned about the expeditions have been conducted to the North Sentinel Island after independence. And there, anthropologists played a very important role in many times. Like the first successful attempt was made in 1967 by a team consisted of the officers of Andaman administration along with an anthropologist, Dr. T.N. Pandit from Anthropological Survey of India. They actually have seen through the binoculars the clusters of darkly skinned people along with their children on the shore, and they landed on the island. They went 1 kilometer inside and found 20 empty huts. But this time, no sign of resistance was found or reported. And after that, in 1974, another expedition was made, but this time the experience was completely different. As the party approaching to the island, they saw the Sentinelese standing there, threatened them, and afterwards started to shooting arrows. And finally, the boat was accurately hit several times, and even one of the boat members was hit in his thigh. But remarkably, this tour was very significant for the reason that the team was first able to take the photograph of Sentinelese Islands. And the most remarkable incident happened in 1991, first time in human history, when hand-to-hand contact with the Sentinelese was established. And that time, An anthropologist, Dr. Madhumala Chattopadhyay, was accompanied the team, and and after that event, a number of expeditions were conducted as a part of the gift dropping trips to the North Sentinel Island. And after the brief introduction of the Andamanese Negrito groups, now it's time for the Great Nicobar, which consists two different tribal groups, the Nicobaris and Shompen. Actually, these two tribal groups are linguistically and racially world apart from the Andamanese group. And they divide, actually Nicobaris are divided into the 12 island communities named as Car Nicobar, Chaura, Teresa, etc. And the majority of Nicobaris have been converted into Christianity during the colonial period and afterwards. And Shompen actually distributed on the river valley of Great Nicobar, both on eastern and western coast. And they have some trade and other economic relationship with the Nicobaris, and the current population of Shompen is 229. Following the brief introduction of these islanders, the tribal group of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, here we need to go back to the history of the formation of the penal settlement in Andaman, which will be very helpful to understand, to comprehend the incidence of the interaction of natives with the colonizers and how their life were gradually changed. Overall, the formation of the penal settlement, forest exploitation, agricultural activities, presence of British administration, and activities of missionaries could not integrate the natives to the civilized societies. No doubt the changes happened, the physical isolation broke, but their cultural and traditional way of lives are still insular to the external forces for the long time. Overall, the contact with the civilization was an awful experience to the natives of the threat, suspect, and resistance, and consequently the repression and tolerance by British administration. At the time of 18th century, the British administration felt the need for making Andaman as a convenient stop for ships for regular refilling of supplies and as well as making repairs. And for this reason, Captain Ritchie was sent to the island to do the preliminary survey, and Ritchie was the first person who submitted a first-hand report containing the colonial encounters with the natives in 1771. Okay, and he stated the usefulness of the island as well as the islanders. After the Ritchie, Captain Thomas Forrest and the Captain Francis Buchanan in the year of 1783 and 88 respectively drew the attention of the East India Company to the islands and islanders by pointing out that the islanders are not necessarily hostile as generally believed that time. Actually, Captain Buchanan himself visited the coastlines of the Andaman and suggested that the East India Company should explore and exploit the potentialities of this place fully. And keeping the view of the suggestions, the East India Company actually decided to send a survey team under the guidance of Lieutenant Archibald Blair from the Indian Royal Navy. And finally, in September 1789, the penal colony was established in Chatham Island of Andaman by clearing the forest, setting up the cottages, and planting the kitchen gardens, and which was the prominent mark of the arrival of the civilization in Andaman. Initially, the Blair was actually instructed to adopt a conciliatory attitude, endeavor by persuasion, and taking the kind and attentive attitudes towards the inhabitants of the islands, which was expected to remove the hesitations of the islanders. And it may be interpreted here that this was the first fabrication of social communication with the islanders. At the same time, some convicts were sent from the mainland to render their labor for establishing the penal colony. And in April 1790, the colony was shifted from Chatham Island, which is situated in Southern Harbour, to the Northeast Island and named Port Cornwallis after the name of the Governor General Lord Cornwallis. And the old site came to be known as Port Blair. And afterwards, in 1792, the British government ordered Governor Alexander Cate to take the charge of the Port Cornwallis, and therefore, in 1793, the Blair was relieved from the island. And at the time of the leaving, Blair had taken two Andamanese children, probably the Jarwa, to Calcutta. By observing them, Governor Cate wrote, it's very important to mention here, that they fall to be ranked amongst the lowest yet discovered on the scale of civilization. In a word, man in the rudest state of nature. Comparing their height to Laplanders, amongst the lowest in stature of the human race. In addition to that, he made an extensive note on the physical attributes of the natives, like nose, height, lips, hairs, teeth, etc., along with the how they ate, what they ate, how they are singing, dancing, their tones of voices, everything was included in this note. And after the Alexander Cate's observation, now it's very meaningful to know the Blair's perception towards the islanders. At the time of leaving, Blair stated that the natives of the south of the harbour came to be very friendly, which was quite doubtful, and sometimes visit to ask for food or bits of iron for arrowheads. And by describing their physical attributes, he stated their color of the darkest hue, their stature in general small, and their aspect uncouth. Their limbs are ill-formed and slender, their belly is prominent, and like Africans, they have woolly heads, thick lips, and flat nose. Though Governor Cate was very optimistic about the settlement in Andaman, but in the year of 1794, the situation was started to be changed regarding the health situation of the settlers. And finally, in May 1796, East India Company decided to abandon the islands, keeping in the view of the high rates of sickness and mortality among the settlers, and described the incident as the Great Embarrassment. This time, approximately 270 number of convicts were transferred to the another Indian penal settlement established in the islands of Penang. Following Blair, actually Governor Cate took two Andamanese children back to the Calcutta and employed them as servants. He stated further that these boys were much noticed for their striking singularity regarding the physical appearance. Not only that, they were modeled for watercolor, which is represented here in made in Calcutta. Now, after the relinquishment of the settlement in Andaman, there is a time of hibernation for 60 years from 1796 to 1856. Many accounts for the destruction of boats on the coastlines, slave trading, kidnapping of natives were recorded in many reports of the explorers. Here, one of the incidents may be mentioned. In 1824, actually, a native family consisting a man, a lady, and two kids were kidnapped and brought to the Penang Island. Fortunately, the girl kid was survived, and finally, when she was at the age of 14, she was put into the service of the Ayah in the headquarters of the police, and afterwards she went to Malacca and then to Singapore, where it is said that she opened a girls' school. And therefore, it can be said that the incidences of slave trading and kidnapping of natives may be seen as a part of a continuum of slavery as well as the bondage characteristics of South and Southeast Asia that time. In 1825, afterwards, the Lieutenant James Alexander, during his travel, visited the Andaman Islands. Actually, he was traveling from India to England, and he suddenly visited the Little Andaman Islands and submitted an interviewing report consisting of the colonial encounters with the Onge of Little Andaman. He wrote there that the approximately 16 strong and able-bodied men, lusty fencers, and wild-looking beings were bent in a threatening manner. Their hideous faces were painted with red ochre, and their bodies were smeared with mud that didn't completely hide their sooty skin. And after this, the visit of Alexander, Captain Alexander, the visit of Dr. Helfer and his sudden death actually left a record which describes the nature of islanders that time. Actually, Dr. Helfer was an amateur naturalist as well as practicing doctor, arrived in Andaman in 1840. He described in detail the first meeting of the islanders with the islanders, the first communication with them, their physical appearance, the exchange of a bowl of rice, etc. And by describing them, he stated that they are the dreaded savages, timid children of nature, and happy when no harm is to be done to them. And but unfortunately, he died at the age of 30 years by a sudden attack by islanders. And apart from these incidences, there are several reports on the shipwrecks as well as the crisis landing in the coast of the islands. Here, for example, in November 1844, two troop ships, Bredon and Runnymede, drifted by the tropical storm, were flung directly over the reef. The members of the ships faced difficulties, being annoyed and frozen, assaulted by the islanders a few times during the 54-day stay in Ireland. Again in 1849, a merchant ship Emily was smashed by the monsoon storm onto the reef of the west coast of the island, and the captain of the ship, F. Anderson, described his 4-day struggle for survival, but no contacts with the islanders reported that time. And to rescue the Emily, another vessel, HMS Proserpine, proceeded to the shipwreck. And when the rescue party boarded shipwreck, they found that the natives had taken all the foodstuffs, including biscuits, liquors, everything, but surprisingly had not taken the salted meat. And afterwards, the rescue team had to face a sudden attack by islanders. And the situation afterwards just started to be changed. Like in 1850, another vessel, Sea Serpent, visited Andaman and found the islanders quite cooperative. And after a few months of this visit, a sailor from Sea Serpent visited again the place where a native boy had befriended with him, taken several coconuts from him, seated in boat and enjoyed hookah with great contentment. Surprisingly, the boy was completely aware of the firearms, but curious about how the fire was produced. And probably this was the first conversation made by the colonizers with a native boy of Andaman. Meanwhile, the Great Indian Revolt, Sepoy Mutiny in 1857 broke out. The British government took many repressive steps towards the rebels, and many of them were sentenced for life imprisonment, and many more were sentenced for with the certain periods of imprisonment, depending on the nature of their crime. And therefore, the jails of India were not adequate to keep the comparatively such higher number of under trials and convicts that time in comparison to the normal situation. And it can be said that the Sepoy Mutiny in 1857 acted as a catalyst for colonization in Andaman. That time, actually, British government was constrained to reconsider about the transportation of countless rebels to Andaman. Henceforth, in November 1857, a committee was constituted named as Andaman Committee with Frederick John Mount as president. Primarily, the objective of this committee was to explore the seashores of the Andaman Islands and select a best site to establish a penal settlement to accommodate thousands of rebels from India. But secondly, they aimed to establish the friendly relations with the island's indigenous people, but the committee was not successful due to the rejection of every attempt of conciliation by the natives. Here, it is to be mentioned that the members of Andaman Committee speculated about the islanders as savages, and their speculations actually made them ready to meet either man or devil in fair and open fight. And later, Mount, in his report of Andaman Committee, depicted the Andamanese women as naked, the women as plain, unattractive, and absolutely hideous. Complexions were extremely black, their small and dwarfish figures were hard and angular, and their general contour was reverse of gracefulness. Most women cut their hair curls very close, which made Mount annoyed the most. During the survey, committee members dragged a Andamanese boy actually to the boat and named him Andaman's John or Jack Andaman. As they didn't know the name of this native boy, they took him to Calcutta where he was photographed and presented to Governor General and Lady Canning. In a letter to Queen Victoria, Lady Canning later said that the boy was quite cheerful, tractable, at the same time imitates almost everything. The British kidnapped the Jack in order to gather the information about the islanders as a conduit for knowledge of the supposed benefits of colonial civilization. However, he fell ill shortly, and so they returned him to the islanders to an uncertain fate. Based on the Andaman Committee's recommendation, the proposal to set up a penal settlement in Andaman was approved, and therefore in 1858 the colony was established at the Old Harbour, which was named as Port Blair. The British shipped the first batch of 200 mutineers and rebels to the Andamans in March 1858, which is very remarkable day here, and it is celebrated also by this administration under the charge of the medical officer Dr. J.P. Walker. And obviously, the foundation of the settlement in Andaman was disdained by the aborigines, and consequently, several affrays between the natives and new settlers were accounted for. As the prisoners started to clean the jungle, the natives also started to hit them back. And the British officers as well as the convicts in large number lost their lives in forest within the few months after the beginning of the settlement. But these skirmishes between the natives and the new settlers also resulted in the loss of many Andamanese lives simultaneously. And all these incidents in 1858 actually made very annoyed and immensely impatient Dr. Walker, and therefore he has taken many aggressive measures towards the rebellion action of the Andamanese. Many canoes were seized, habitations were destroyed, natives were killed. And these incidents actually reflected an act of retaliation and revenge. On the other hand, At the beginning of the settlement, the attacks by the natives were mostly accidental and unorganized. But the next year of the settlement, settlement in the year of 1959, actually was marked by the second phase of the struggle for liberation for their homeland. During April to May 1859, three pre-interment attacks were made by natives, and surprisingly, during these attacks, the aborigines actually was observed that the aborigines didn't have any intention or inclination to assault the fettered convicts, as they noticed them very helpless and treated them very harmless to them. But unfortunately, no attempts by natives was successful that time. Maybe they didn't have any insights to understand the significance of the concentrated efforts made by them during the attacks. But finally, in May 1859, a concentrated and very organized attack was made by Great Andamanis against the colonizers, but the attack was encountered ruthlessly. The plunder of the tools on a large scale was prevented at the cost of many aborigines' life, whose primitive weapons and bow and arrows couldn't match with the bullets. And afterwards, probably no such kind of organized and concentrated efforts was made by the Great Andamanis after the Battle of Aberdeen. And this organized attack in 1859 was very famous in Andaman history, known as the Battle of Aberdeen. And definitely the measures and the actions taken by Dr. J.P. Walker during the Battle of Aberdeen in 1859 made the British government very annoyed to him, and they ordered him to depart the island. And after his departure in 1859, that was marked as a second phase of the history of relations with the Great Andamanis. Actually, the amicable phase was started that time. Though very few sporadic attempts of attacks by natives were accounted for up to the last month of 1859, but the British government utilized their best attempts to placate the natives in every possible way. And after these few sporadic attempts, a faint sign of commencement of the friendly gesture by Akabiada, which already I have mentioned, one of the septs of Great Andamanis, also reported. And the reason behind this friendly gesture of Great Andamanis, maybe they already understood that the colonizers were much more stronger than that, and it couldn't be possible to overcome them in an open fight. And at the same time, the British officers also understood the real feelings of Great Andamanis and took few preventive measures like distributing food items, clothes, irons, etc. During this time, in 1861, one event is very important in the discussion of the building of the relationships between the Great Andamanis and the colonizers. The British actually, during an attack, captured three Andamanese boys, sent them to the Burma for training in English in order to make a medium of interaction with the Great Andamanis. One of them expired after a short illness, and remaining two couldn't learn anything and therefore released. But after their return, their experience of enormous compassion of Britishers made a profound impression on their countrymen, and therefore a spectacular change in their attitude was observed thereafter. And within this period, actually, the British government have taken some measures to civilize and they actually thought about the welfares of Great Andamanis of Andaman Island. And in April 1863, Colonel Tytler, the superintendent of Port Blair, established the Andaman Home in Ross Island. It was a habitation for great Andamanis, which consisted of a collection of huts with an enclosed surrounding of all sides by a bamboo fence. Actually, the policy of British administrators to build a Andaman home was to civilize the Great Andamanis in home, and in order to achieve this objective, the inmates of this home were instructed in English only. But later, I will show how this institutional arrangement to civilize the Great Andamanis have become detrimental to their health and life. Now, coming to the another scenario, on the other hand, in 1850s, the Jarwas of South Andaman drew the attention of British administration by their troublesome act. In 1867, D.M. Stewart, the chief commissioner of the Andaman and Nicobar administration, and his party were suddenly attacked by Jarwa at Port Cornwallis, and at the same time, during this attack, the Britishers captured a Jarwa couple, thought that they might be able to communicate with the other groups of the islanders also. And during the same time, in 1867 to 73, the various skirmishes between the Onges of Little Andaman and Britishers were reported. And that time, the Britishers have taken some repressive measures towards the Onges of Little Andaman. Like many huts were burnt, destroyed. About 12 Onges were killed, and one of them was captured and taken to Port Blair. But very shortly, he was died. During 1880s, to suppress this type of activities of Onge, the British administrators have conducted many punitive measures to the Little Andaman, actually to establish the control over all the islands as well as assure the safety of the British ships. And to achieve this goal, the pacification of Onge tribal group was essentially required. And this work actually have done during the Portsman tenure in Andaman. Portman actually was the superintendent of the penal settlement in Andaman, and during his tenure of 21 years in Andaman, the period was remarkably marked by the greatest achievement in establishing friendly relations with the Onge of Little Andaman. But in case of Jarwa, who Portman was not succeeded like Onge. Actually, during 1883 to 1920, the intensity of Jarwa attacks on the settlements expanded significantly, and Britishers initially actually have taken some measures to treat them very kindly, to make them understand that the Britishers are not harmful to Jarwa. Initially, they caught few offenders, Jarwa offenders, and discharged after the kind treatment for a couple of days. But these arrangements and treatments have had no impact on them. And finally, in 1909 to 1920, the intensity of attacks were increased markedly by Jarwas, and the Britishers have taken the repressive measures towards them. Many communal huts were wrecked, and simultaneously 37 Jarwas were killed. But still, Jarwas kept attacking the settlement many times up to the 1960 after independence, and during these attacks, many Jarwas were killed. Now, coming to the another scenario, actually on the other hand, in 1864 to 70, the several epidemics like measles, influenza, ophthalmia, syphilis, and many more reported among the great Andamanis in the establishment of Andaman home. That time, 150 children were born in the Andaman home, but not a single child lived beyond 2 years. Keeping the view of this type of disease and the child mortality, in 1869, Andamanis orphanage was established, but Andaman Home, the Andamanese orphanage was also proved to be a cradle of many diseases to Great Andamanis. And finally, in 76 to 78, at least half of the original inhabitants of Great Andamanis died of measles. And finally, the Andaman Home and Andaman Orphanage proved to be most deleterious, where the Great Andamanis learned to smoke, contracted new sexually transmitted diseases, and were given new kind of foods to which they were completely unaccustomed. Now, I'm showing a graphical representation which actually depicted the gradual decrease in the number of Great Andamanis, Onge and Jarwa populations in Andaman since colonial period. Here we can see a sharp decline among the Great Andamanis and Onge since 1858. Maybe the reason was the repetitive attacks against the colonizers, during which the large number of natives were killed. And in case of the Great Andamanis especially, the 1859 Battle of Aberdeen, the Andaman establishment of Andaman Home, the Andaman Orphanage, all played a very detrimental role to their health. And finally, after independence, the resettlement of Onge and Great Andamanis also played a very important role in their declination of population. But strikingly, in case of Jarawa, the population increased after 1951, which was indicative that that their aggressive defensive mechanisms towards the outsiders still did. And therefore, in conclusion, it can be said that the Negrito groups of Andaman, except Sentinelese, who were still reclusive and uncontacted from the outsiders, were the main victims of the intrusion and experienced adverse impacts during the colonial period. As a result, the survival of these hunter-gatherer groups of Andaman has been threatened, resulting in the declination in population size and displacement from their natural habitat. Even after the independence, the additional burden of the settlement of the thousands of refugees and increasing demand for more islands pushed them to an age of extinction. And today, on this auspicious day of International Day of World's Indigenous Population, my discussion is completely dedicated towards the natives unknown on whose bone we stand. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, madam, for your excellent presentation. It has been so very engaging and so very informative. And I find there are many questions in the chat box. It is a time for some interactions further on. I would now request our respected IQAC member, Dr. Raka Biswas, to take charge of this moderation to conduct this interactive session. Dr. Raka Biswas, please.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Carry on.
First of all, a wonderful lecture and excellent deliberation, and really it was a very informative. We people do not know much about these indigenous people, these aborigines. So we are really enriched through this lecture, and thank you, the Honorable Speaker, ma'am. Now we have some questions. The first question is from Professor Kuntol Chattopadhyay of our institution. The question is, what are the most remarkable changes in lifestyle of the indigenous population of Andaman Nicobar in post-colonial India compared to the period of British Raj?
Uh, Thank you so much, Professor Chattopadhyay, for this question, which is very pertinent to my today's lecture. Actually, as I already have shown that after independence, the two community, Andamanis and Onge, were resettled, and they were uprooted from the natural habitats, and therefore they couldn't continue their traditional subsistence pattern like hunting, gathering, foraging, and all fishing. Therefore, they are bound to dependent on the Andaman administration for their free rations. And as I already have told, that they have already grown a kind of dependency characteristics among them. And certainly the food habit changed at a certain level, and that actually much impactful on their health. They are the hunter-gatherer tribes, but they should have some certain kind of body type and physical attributes, as we the biological anthropologists know already. But now they started to have some changes like overweight and obesity, hypertensions, this kind of the diseases as well as the risk factors for the other diseases have developed among them. And as per my understanding, though I couldn't have any opportunity to visit any tribes of Andaman till date, but as per my understanding, based on the existing literature, that certainly for the resettled communities, there should be some kind of psychological insecurities, loss of their ethnic identities are also there, and therefore they know that they are diminishing nowadays, and no one could help them, and that is the main agony of these islanders presently. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Sri Mohendra Jaiswal. It is written in Hindi, and I'm not good in Hindi at all, but I'm trying. The question is, अंडमान निकोबारों के द्वीप समूहों के ओंगे और जारवे जनजाति के बीच आम आदमी भी जा सकते हैं या सिर्फ मानव विज्ञानी ही जाते हैं उनके बीच?
Actually, I would like to speak in Hindi, though this question is in Hindi. Actually, जसवाल जी, जानवर होंगे अभी तो रिजर्व एरिया में, ट्राइबल रिजर्व एरिया में रहते हैं, तो अंडमान एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के परमिशन के बिना अलाउड नहीं है कि आप उनके एरिया में जाओ. नॉट नेसेसरीली कि मानव विज्ञानी जा सकते हैं, कोई भी जा सकता है, एनी रिसर्चर, any traveler also can go, but they need to have a permit from issued from the Andaman administration. That's all. But लेकिन आपको ये बताना पड़ेगा कि what purpose you are going to visit these inhabitants of these islands. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question.
Professor,
The next question is from Professor Anshuman Sarkar of our institution. Is there any evidence of migration of Jarvas to Africa, as some phenotypic similarities with African groups are found? Am I audible?
Yeah. Is this a comment or question? Is this a query or? Sorry, I couldn't.
It's a query. Would I repeat once again?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Is there any evidence of migration of Jarvas to Africa, as some phenotypic similarities with African groups are found?
Yeah. Here, actually, I have shown the Britishers have described the islanders as a African origin, and they have shown all the racial characteristics as their physical attributes. But afterwards, in the last 2 decades, many researchers have been done among the on the migration pattern as well as the racial affinities of the Andaman Islanders with the other group of people. But most strikingly, I would like to mention the work, Tangaraj work in the year of 2006, and afterwards the Parthapratim Mujumdar sir also did many works on the migration and the molecular similarities with the people. But they have found that the Negrito populations actually do not show any particular affinities with the African populations or with any Indian populations. Okay, actually they confirm their unique origin. And very recently, actually, Anthropological Survey of India also have published a book actually they have also showed by the mitochondrial haplogroups that the Andaman Negrito group is having some unique origin. They are not at all related to the African Negritos. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Shubhajit Bantopadhyay, again from our institution, Department of Botany. The question is, in your opinion, what are the major causes of depletion of population of Aboriginal peoples of Andaman Islands than Nicobar Islands? Is there any document of genetic studies of these people? There are two questions actually.
Yeah, okay. Firstly, I just would like to address the first question at first. That is the major causes of the declination of the population, Andamanese population rather than Nicobar. That's it now. Actually, as I already have showed the geographical location of Andaman and Andaman as well as the Nicobar Island, and actually today's discussion was also on the Andamanese rather than Nicobaris because the interference of the colonial period, colonizers, as well as the after colonial period, after independence, the administration is much among the Andamanese Negritos than the Nicobaris. Actually, Nicobaris have some internal set of administration among them. They have a particular role of captain among them. The captains are elected by their own islanders, and the captains are designated to take all the decisions in favor to the Nicobaris. But in case of Andamanis, Unges, and Jarwas, this type of arrangement is not there among them. And already I have told the Nicobaris are already in the stage of the productive economy. They are agriculturists, and nowadays they are involved in many government service. And here I would like to mention one of our Deputy Director of Anthropological Survey of India, Andaman Nicobar Regional Center, was Nicobaris. He is Dr. A. Justin. He was very famous in doing a different work among the Nicobaris as well as Jarwa and other tribal groups of Andaman. But here is, as per my opinion, first of all, the colonial exploitation, because the penal settlement was established in Andaman Island. Therefore, the direct interaction with the colonizers was happened with the Andamanis only. And afterwards, after independence, the matter of resettlement also played a very important role in case of the population declination. The resettlement actually done, but as per my understanding was the resettlement and rehabilitation phenomena, they were not rehabilitated in the strict sense, they were resettled. Therefore, the administration could be able to stress on the livelihood pattern as well as their cultural way of life. And nowadays they are living in a very small islands, and they couldn't go outside as a hunter-gatherer tribes. They need a very specific amount of areas to roam and do hunting, and therefore they couldn't go for the hunting, and these type of things actually affecting their life as well as the psychological conditions, as per my understanding. And now, the second part of the question is the genetic studies among the population. Definitely, there are already many genetic studies have been done. As I already have mentioned, that the Tangaraj was from PCMC Hyderabad, and many other works also done, and Anthropological Survey of India was also did some very pioneering work on the Andamanis based on the serological blood group, based on the blood groups and the physiological variables, and as well as the mtDNA to find out the migrations. There are much works, but definitely potentialities of the good research works also there, and I think it needs to be addressed in coming future. Thank you.
But what is the reason to decline the fertility rate in all Andamanis populations?
Actually, I heard that the fertility rate already declined among the Andamanis period, but I actually have discussed along with the administrators of the tribal administrators actually, and actually I found the fact actually they are expressing the opinion that fertility is not declined. Actually, the number is very less. They are remaining after all the injustices during the colonial period and after the settlement. Actually, I have mentioned the 44 number of Andamanis, but practically, as per my understanding, the number is much less than 44 also, because at the time of census, they are taking all the admixtured population also into their account, but the original Andamanis race are surviving only maybe 30 to 35, not more than that, and that means there are very less opportunity to mate within each other and reproduce. That is my understanding. I don't know whether in coming future some other understandings and opinions will come up with some more studies. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks once again for wonderful and lucid explanation to all the queries of the audience. Now, I can't see any more question in the chat box. There is a very simple question in the present context from my end. May I, ma'am?
Yeah, please.
You have said regarding the outbreak of many diseases in those areas. Now,
Yeah.
since we are going through a pandemic situation, what is the COVID situation in those islands?
Yeah, of course, it is also a very important question during this pandemic situation. As per my information, whatever I have come through, that in 2020, around 10 Andamanis, Great Andamanis I'm talking about,
Okay.
were infected, but no death cases were reported. And very recently in 2021, unofficially I heard some infections among the Onges also, but very little less in number. But the vaccination was done among the Onges as well as the few of the Jarwas. And the first dose of the vaccinations, obviously.
Okay.
I heard that this is a trial basis, that ink was a trial. But I hope that the total group of the people will be vaccinated very soon. But no death case during the COVID situation was reported this time. Thank you.
That is very positive. That is very
That
positive.
is very positive. And
Yes.
maybe the isolation and the resettlement plays a very important role in this case. This is a positive role actually they are playing this time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
And now I'd like to. Hello.
Yeah, fine.
Sir, now this is over to our coordinator, sir, Professor Kuntal Chattopadhyay.
I must once again congratulate Dr. Mukherjee for this very illuminating as well as highly delightful session. Our lecture followed by the interactions, we are really enriched. And now we are reaching the very end of today's session. I would request another member of our IQAC, Narasimha Datta College, faculty member of the Department of Chemistry, Dr. Pradeep Kumar Taposhi, to deliver the vote of thanks. Dr. Taposhi, please.
Thank you, sir. A pleasant good evening to you all. It's really my privilege to propose vote of thanks speech and acknowledge the contribution of those who worked really hard to make this webinar happen. Firstly, I must acknowledge our principal madam, Dr. Shoma Bandyopadhyay, and the coordinator, Internal Quality Assurance Cell, Dr. Kuntol Chattopadhyay sir, for their great enthusiasm and continuous encouragements in this regard. I, on behalf of the IQAC, Narasimha Datta College, want to thank our honorable speaker, Dr. Koel Mukherjee, anthropologist, Anthropological Survey of India, Andaman and Nicobar Regional Center, Port Blair, India, who spared her busy schedule to deliver an interesting and illuminating presentation on the journey from isolation to interaction during British Raj, the case of natives of Andaman. Today we had an opportunity to hear you, madam, your thoughts on indigenous people of Andaman, and we are really, truly enriched. I also want to extend my generous thanks to all the participants, respected teachers, students, for making this webinar successful. Further, a big thanks to the Internal Quality Assurance Cell of our college for organizing this webinar on auspicious International Indigenous Peoples Day today. With their appreciating ideas, I mention my sincere sense of gratitude to them. And last but not the least, I would like to place my hearty thanks to all the members of the technical team of our college, because of whom we made this webinar possible. Thank you all. With this, I handed over the baton to our coordinator, sir. Sir, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taposhi, for moving vote of thanks at today's session. We are right at the end of today's session. Customarily, Principal Madam usually declares the end of the session, but this evening she has informed me that she has left the meeting on some urgent errands. So on her behalf, I would like to mark the end of this session once again with all thanks to the speaker, to the participants, and to all those people who hard worked to make this webinar a success. Thank you all, and good night to you all.